Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to the podcast. Just go to Apple. Apple's the big kahuna now. We're on 30 different channels. Pick the one you want, but I suggest Apple. And while you're out there subscribing, go visit globalinvestoragent.com. Remember, this is the site you go to find agents, real estate agents who are trained to work with you and I, the investor. They're not typical agents. They have the terminology, the methodology. They even have the tools to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market deals for you and I. And if you are an agent, man, you'd be crazy to not click on the learn more button right now, especially the way the market's going. Just start off with a couple of investors flipping and doing some duplexes and go from there. And then we teach you how to work with the right kind of investor. Okay, this is really important. So in any case, without further ado, we got a great guest today, Eric Francom. Eric, thank you so much for joining us, man. You got a great subject, a great background, and I can't wait to get this going. So thank you so much for joining us.
So glad to be here. Thank you, Gary.
You're very welcome. Hey, let's start at the beginning. Kind of lead us up to how you got to where you are now, going back from maybe your days of your first job, and obviously you were served in the military, and thank you for that. And show us how that kind of led you to where you are, if you don't mind sharing that,
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked in manufacturer as a manufacturer sales rep while I was going through undergraduate, Weber State University in Utah. And I worked with my dad and uncle and just got to understand manufacturers and corporations, how they worked a little bit better. Ended up going to dental school. So while I was there, I still tried to buy rental houses as much as I could. And just that was my investments at the time. Fast forward through dental school, I started my own dental practice and created a group of 4 of them. I owned the real estate on 2 of them, and I decided to rent so I could scale a little faster on the other 2. But I ended up having a exit where I pivoted. I was thinking I would sell maybe 1, but ended up selling all 4 of them together, and kind of got the financial freedom that I was looking for. I'd had a setup where I could now just invest and live off of the dividends in perpetuity. But there's only so much golf you can play, and I'm not much of a golfer anyways. So I ended up just the investments that I had done. I had also spent quite a bit of money, well over $1 million in private mentors and masterminds, and just getting the best coaches to teach me about off-market exclusive deals, how to invest in things that your financial advisor doesn't really talk to you about. And that's really been the best investment that I've ever had.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny you mentioned that earlier about golfing and having the freedom of time. I really just started golfing 2 years ago. I had golfed before, but I never really had the time to pursue it. I had children and everything, and now I can enjoy it. I really love it, but I really stink at it. And so all my friends I golf with, they laugh. They call me the entertainment. Hey, let's make sure the entertainment's there. You're going to have fun, but
that's about all I'm good for too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But the thing is, when I retired from the corporate world, it was strange. It was a strange feeling because I'm watching my neighbors go off to work, and I'm sitting there reading the paper and a cup of coffee on the deck. And I actually worked harder, at investing and so forth. So I understand that mindset. It takes a while for you to give yourself permission to, realize you bought your freedom, and then you've earned that right. It's a responsibility. I mean, you want to, stay young and be active and everything. But let's dig in to what happened then. You're into a couple different things, real estate, and you and I were talking about crypto, which I really appreciate. But let's talk about let's talk about one of your deals. Maybe we can break it down. Maybe your first deal, or maybe the first big deal that put you in a different level. Whatever you think is most relevant. We got an easy crowd to talk to. A lot of professionals, a lot of business owners, and a lot of realtors. So I'll let you kind of have freedom of choice there.
Great, yeah. So there are several to pick from, and just like in real estate, you're going to do a lot better when you have 30 different properties to pick from, and you can more set your terms and get the deals that you like, and you can easily say no and walk away from anything. The same thing with the private equity and venture capital deals that I do. I want to make sure I have a lot more deal flow than I could ever invest into of the great deals. Otherwise, you're emotionally attached and you can really get stuck. Maybe jumping into something because you're afraid of missing out. That's the most dangerous thing, I think, is that FOMO that people have. Can get them into bad deals and not knowing what to compare them to. So, one that I really like is one that I have an NDA, so I can't mention their name, but they're a company that was enticed by the city and state of New York to come bring tech to the city and state of New York. And they were able to convert an old naval yard into their company. And they were, through these incentives, given basically a $1 per square foot lease, which they're able to rent out at $110 or more per square foot. And they also are able to have their tenants, they pay them for their services, for their engineers, for everything that they have going on. So not only are they paying rent, they're paying the service fees. And there's a very high floor to an investment like that.
Okay.
That's not even where they make the most of their money. Where they'll make the most of their money is by these startups that they're incubating and accelerating. The ones that they select, the top of the top, they'll choose to partner with them. They'll take a percentage, 20 or to 25% of the company oftentimes. And as that becomes a very big company or even a unicorn, that's where they make most of their money. But the price that we invested into was about the same price of that 55-year lease, that the way it was appraised out. So those are the kind of investments that I look for, things that I project, 3 to 5, even 10 times return on investment in a relatively short period of time, that has downside protection with real estate. Yeah.
I love one of our, it's a layman's term. I teach a lot of people about investing, both investors and agents alike. And one of my terms is, I call it, upside potential versus downside risk. Right. And it's a great, easy, consumable phrase that's backed by a lot of, data and analysis and wisdom. And really what you're looking for is the greatest upside potential and the least downside risk. And sometimes it's fluid, but you have to study the industry, study the macro market, the micro market, and look at the specific deal characteristics as much as you can. It's funny, we never actually get 100% of the data. We think we do sometimes, but there's always a little surprises that pop up. You're just trying to minimize that and look for the greatest potential on the upside. That one deal, that's probably one of the best ones I've ever heard of. I've had some good ones, but that's like 110x return on that $1. That's
not bad on the returns there. Not to mention, that's the smallest part of their profits. That's something that's just facilitating so that they can get these real home run balls.
Right. So here's what's interesting. I want to kind of, for everybody listening, we do this sometimes. We'll bring up other subjects, subjects other than real estate, but it's all related. You can actually connect real estate investments with other types of investments, because you can leverage real estate to raise capital to do some other activities. So to me, real estate's really always been more of the foundation upon which I launch other ventures, other businesses. So can we talk about that a little bit about this? So they're bringing in these startups, and I guess are they analyzing the startups? Or are they looking at more like, what's the least potential, the potential and the least renting the place out?
Yeah.
In addition, so if you could talk about that a little bit without divulging anything,
certainly,
not supposed to, that'd be great.
Yeah. In that particular instance, they turn away 92% of the people that are applying to be part of their group and to learn from them. And then they spend at least a year with them. And a typical venture capital firm, it said, does about 40 hours of due diligence to vet a company before they do a merger or acquisition. And these guys spend 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, for at least a year or two, and they know who are the cream of the crop. So after the 8% that have made it in, they take about 8% of them and partner with them. So yes, they're taking the best of the best of the best that they know are going to be the winners. And they have reserved rights. Like some of these companies have some amazing technology to extract, nitrogen out of ammonia and different things that they're working on making as a ready clean fuel source from a waste product. And Amazon came by and said, hey, we're going to buy every penny of that we can. And they bought everything except for what these guys had contracted to be able to maintain on their own. So yeah, that's a great way. And in my personal life, I mean, that's what really changed things, is when I went from being a cash hoarder that wanted to own my real estate outright to leveraging that real estate. That's where the infinite growth happened. And that's partly why I call my movement Infinite Freedom, is you're not just holding on to, the scarcity, but you're watching things grow and you're able to live off of the dividends while it's still growing so that you can live your dream life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's interesting is we were just discussing this Monday night. I had a guest teacher on my class. We call it Monday Night Live. So every Monday at 7. And normally I teach it, but once or twice a month we have a guest teacher. And she brought up this really interesting loan program. They call it an all-in-one loan. And it's sort of a hybrid first mortgage when you buy a house combined with a line of credit. So it's open-ended. You get to draw on it when you want, but you use a conduit account for your W-2 income, your investment, whatever your income you use for daily monthly living expenses. You put in this account, and any excess is using a sweep process is swept into paying the principal of the mortgage. So it's like you have your own bank. And I said, this is so awesome, because in my early days of investing, I was scaling up and I used my properties as my own bank, but it was through forced discipline. I didn't have any mechanism or a system to do it. It was just Gary Wilson, using delayed gratification so I could take my earnings, pay down principal, building up equity, right? And then I could borrow against that with a line of credit to buy the next property. And I just kept that bankrolling until eventually I got to where I literally had some paid off completely. And I got a business line of credit, a blanket mortgage across the existing properties. And after I did it, people would say, well, how do you do that? Because most commercial banks would never do that. They want to be in first position. They want you to refinance. And I said, I just asked. I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I got. And I didn't get all the yeses I wanted, but I got the one I wanted. And he said, you know what, that's a good deal. I think I'll take you up on that. And it was a little bit higher rate than the prevailing rates, but man, that was the next big stepping point for me, the turning point that put me at the next level. And from there, it was just, it actually got easier. Is that what you found too, Eric? That it actually got easier as you went along? It does.
It gets easier. You have more network. People are competing, for you. A mentor of mine, Dan Sullivan is his name. He always says, always be the buyer. And I really have always loved that. He has a book called that, a mini book. And so you always want to be the buyer. That's why you have a lot of deal flow. You always want to be the buyer with the banks. And that's why I do like getting multiple offers from different banks of different sizes. And, even the one that has, maybe I can use the term from one to go with the rate from the other. You can go with who you want to go with, but sometimes that's the best way to get rid of, like you say, personal guarantees and different things like that. Is it never hurts to ask and shop around.
Yeah. I was with Dan for a couple of years myself too. I actually lived in London, Ontario, which is 2 hours west of Toronto. And nice. I used to live in the Danforth, and so we connected on a lot of levels, and a real neat guy. I went to his house, and, great story, but in any case, so if you would you mind sharing, did you have your own formula when you started out for, to be able to leverage what you had? Did you keep what you had and build on it, or did you trade up, or kind of fill us in there if you don't mind?
Yeah, mine was kind of a unique situation. So I sold my dental offices, and now I'm the landlord for the new buyers. And we had structured the deal in a way that I would basically give them less rent for several years and a little bit more on the purchase price. We kind of both had done the math that worked out that way. So the fact of the matter is, when I paid it off, the bank said, well, if you're not the tenant anymore, we want you to use the proceeds of the sale to pay off the building. So some of the equity was tied up in the walls of that building that I couldn't really get at, because they didn't want to give it to me because the rent was low. So they only wanted to give me a very small amount. So what I did in my case is I came upon a shopping center that was for sale in the area. And it was kind of an interesting thing, because it had a big, huge warehouse building that was about 33,000 square feet that needed some work, and it was just sitting there vacant. And the owners were afraid they couldn't sell that part. So they didn't want to sell their cash flowing rental part without selling it. They made it a package deal. And I did the math and I said, hey, this thing cash flows even without that warehouse. I could just let it sit there and it's still a good deal for me, especially because there was enough room over that I could cross collateralize my other 2 buildings. So I did a cross collateralization loan for the 3 buildings, and it had enough collateral that I was able to do a sizable cash out refinance for what market value would have been rather than based on the rents. And so, I got paid money at closing, plus I got this other building that I cut out from the deal that it wasn't even part of the deal. It had no lien on it. I basically got a free building bonus on top of it, which is appreciated. And I ended up getting it rented out. And, that was the way that I got kind of a free building. So, and then I took those proceeds and put those in things that are making higher rents than, my bond note of real estate would bring me. So I could go for some home runs. There are some 3 to 5 times predictable investments that I'm into. There are some that are paying 36% divided in 12 monthly payments. And in passive income, I'm getting 36% plus equity in some companies to let them pay cash flow. So that's how the leverage has really worked for me.
Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind, I want to go back to the part where you sold your business. And I'm always interested in this because I felt, this is my 7th business that the podcast is part of the 7th business. Mm-hmm. And I know somebody that's he's a retired managing director from UBS Financial, and his business is to help other people sell their businesses when they're like in their 60s, ready to retire. But I never really thought about it much. How did you position yourself, or how would one position themselves to sell, like a person selling a dental practice? By the way, we have a lot of dentists following the podcast. So, yeah.
Well, dentists a lot of times have an advantage because a lot of times they do own their own real estate, compared to some other doctors. Some of my cousins are physicians. My brother's a physician, and they tend to be W-2 owners, where real estate is a great thing for them to get into to offset some of that, especially if they have a spouse that's a real estate professional and they can, offset some of their ordinary income. So, as far as that being a good way to build equity, the real money comes from building a business that you can have just EBITDA, the profit, the earnings before interest, EBI, interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you have solid EBITDA, that's what they're going to pay a sizable multiple on. So it's important to set up your business as a business, not just a self-employed place where you go to work. Nobody wants to buy a job, but if you can get something that has systems that you can show can be run without you being there, then there's real value to your business. Especially the bigger you get, the higher those multiples tend to be, because the big money that's coming in doesn't want to waste their time with small potatoes, 1s and 2s. It's worth more to them to buy, medium-sized fish so they can gobble them up and sell them to the bigger fish, which is their end play. So that's where a lot of wealth is created, is the ownership of business.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I got to meet Robert Kiyosaki back in 2015 in Lake Tahoe. We spent the day together. He and I and a bunch of other guys in a mastermind group, and we were talking about this owning real estate and owning businesses. And it's in some of his teachings. And one of his lessons was, the businesses actually have a lot more capability of helping you build wealth. I mean, you build a business and you can sell it, but the way you structure the deal, it's not like you're giving up the baby. You still benefit from it for a period of time, and right. You develop those skills, and then you know how to identify other good businesses to buy. It's just amazing. So I got to ask you now, what did you do with the money when I understand I think you mentioned that you doubled your money from the sale of that business. How did that come about? How did that come about?
Yeah. So right after the sale of the business, I doubled it in a short amount of time and doubled it again by leveraging. There are hidden deals that you can go into. Sometimes you can enter a fund late that's already doubled in value. And sometimes they don't even have catch-up fees, especially during COVID. They waived some of those. And you can come into a fund later than some of the early investors with much less risk, and your money's already doubled the day you put it in on that particular investment. As well as there are warrants and things that you can buy in companies where you can lend them money that's quite secured against real estate and all sorts of other things, with the option but not obligation to buy their stock at a later time at today's value. So if that company goes way up, you have if it goes 10 times in value, you just basically got 9 times in value from, the warrants that you got, 9 times your warrants, in addition to, the original terms of lending the money, which can be 20, 30% or even more, especially when it's based on performance and how that they're doing. That's where this deal that's paying, in the mid 30% in monthly payments has been very, very good for different investors. So when you're able to have, that money coming in, and you can also allow those distributions to fund other investments. So ones that you might commit to, let's say a $100,000 investment for a round number, you don't have to bring $100,000 to the table. You can do it when the capitals come over the period, the capital calls come over a couple of years, and you can use a cash flowing investment to fund that and essentially get 2 or more deals for the price of one.
So that's amazing, Gary. So let me ask you this. I know everybody's probably thinking right now, how are you finding these deals? So how are you sourcing these deals, and how you negotiate them? And I know is there requirements like you have to be an accredited investor, things like that, which is okay because a lot of our folks are,
Yeah. So for just like most investments, if it's passive most of the time, private deals, you do need to be an accredited investor. So you're either making $200,000 a year, or $300,000 if you're married filing jointly, or you have $1 million worth of assets that are investable. So once you check that box and you're an accredited investor, you have a huge advantage to be able to get into a lot of more exclusive deals, because you're competing not with the general public, you're competing with a more elite group of investors that have a higher, snob level for a good return. So the supply and demand is shifted, but so is, the appetite. People aren't just going to, take a 4 or 5% interest, type of an investment at that point. Yeah. So when your money is tied up in a deal, you tend to get about 4% more on an investment as opposed to when it's just completely liquid. Yeah. So yes, how we source the deals are some of the mentors that I had hired and whatnot kind of led me into the space, and it just goes fast, just like in real estate. Some of the big hitters start to know each other. You're going to the same conferences. You're building real relationships. The time you're spending on the golf courses with them, you over deliver on what you're promising. If you can help them in any way, like a lot of the business development that I had honed in as a dentist and my multi-practices, I brought to some companies and helped them with some problems they were having. They're very grateful. They give me some exclusive, abilities to invest in situations like that. So it's no one thing, but it just is full time. You need a guy at least to get you started. You need an exclusive, type person that's in the game. And once you're in the game, you can make relationships quite quickly, especially if you're willing to hop on a plane or jump on a Zoom call and just meet and connect with people that are doing it.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book, Global Investor Agent, is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from brand new agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders, some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklists to follow to not just survive, but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent. And for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, I agree that the networking and it's, and if you're listening here, I just want you to know that everybody starts at the beginning. Eric did, I did. We didn't start off with a silver spoon in our mouths. We didn't start off with the network. We built the network over time. So the key to success is taking the first step. You've got to make the commitment. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work early on to buy yourself freedom later on. That's one of the keys. I mean, do you get a lucky break ever and then? Absolutely. But usually the lucky breaks come about because you took those critical, necessary steps in the beginning. You got to get past fear, hesitation. There's all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't do something, can't do something. Just come up with one reason why you should do something and how can you do something. It might be a tiny, tiny, tiny little step. My first step was owning half of a house. I couldn't even buy a whole house. I bought it with another guy. That's how I got started. My grandmother gave me $1,600 because I graduated college. That was my gift, right? That's how I got started. In my first paycheck, I banked everything. So just start there. So one of the things that struck me, Eric, along the way is, man, you got to play defense. You got to play offense. You got to score points. But just like on the basketball court, on the football field, you got to watch the back door. You got to play defense. So when it comes to building wealth and income, how do you reduce risk and how do you reduce the tax burden legally? Of course, we follow the rules and we use the tax rules to our advantage. But what's some advice you can get there? How do you reduce that downside, the risk, and how do you minimize the expense of taxes, when possible?
Yeah, and that's where through negotiation and identifying the deal, the right deal, timing is so important for finding the right deal and knowing what you're going into. So finding things that have disproportionate risk and reward balance is really what I look for. And I am younger. If I was a few years from just not wanting to invest because I didn't enjoy it or whatnot, I would probably be in a little bit less aggressive situation as far as my portfolio being more aggressive. But how you hedge it is finding the right deals, essentially things that have a downside protection, and you can find them with people that have guarantees, personal guarantees that secure real estate. I mean, there are things that are quite secure. And I think even more and more now where there's less people investing because they're wondering what the market's going to do. It's a good time for investors to buy assets at a low rate, and you can find good deals and you can get people to get personal guarantees and whatnot on them. So there are several ways. I mean, real estate by itself, that usually a piece of real estate doesn't go down to zero. So it already has some downside protection. But there are some things that we look at in the companies we invest in. Like a fund that I'm invested in is very strategic about where they buy and sell a company. They'll buy them about after their Series A round, where a company is about to have a big increase in value, and they only buy companies that have 5-year contracts with Fortune 500 companies, and they have an ability to get out at the B round. So they virtually have they've had none fail, to my knowledge, companies as they've done that, because these Fortune 500 companies need their software and they're paying them annual money, and there's bigger investors coming in. Even though statistically 70% of them will fail at some point, we're getting 3 to 6 times return on investment in just a very short window like that. So that's one way to de-risk, is to reduce the exposure.
Yeah, I agree as much as possible. And it does take, getting in the game, swinging the bat, so you gain the experience and you develop the intuitive abilities and the instinct, to identify, the upside potential and the downside risk. And so let's look, if you don't mind, let's go back, let's go look at some other things you've done. I was reading about the $2 million building. You're turning a $42,000 a month income, and then a celebrity brands fund, and maybe we might be able to squeeze both of those in. If there's anything you really want to touch on, absolutely. I mean, you know your experience more than I do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that building that was just sitting there, appraised at $1.5 million. It needed a little bit of work. I ended up getting, partnered with the tenant that basically had their own construction company. The husband did to the wife, and they were able to make a deal that gave them decreased rent to help fix that up. And I was able to leverage the building and do a cash out refinance on that building that I didn't pay anything for. And so now I have tenants that are paying for that note plus some, and I took the vast majority, 75% or so of that money, and put it to work in other investments that are paying much higher than real estate typically would. So they say the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is leverage, and not getting over leveraged or taking unnecessary risk, but taking calculated risk is where people really can scale and have that downside protection. If you're diversified, if all of your eggs are in one basket, that basket's at risk. But if you have it diversified over several good investments, then it's much, much safer. So there was two parts there. The celebrity fund. You want me to talk about that one?
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. If you don't mind sharing that, that'd be awesome.
Oh, that's a fun one. So I'm invested with a company that they have a niche in investing with celebrity investors, celebrities that basically, instead of wanting to endorse a product, they want to partner with the company. So they watched George Clooney. He did that with Casamigos Tequila, and they had $1 billion exit. And the other celebrities that were saying, why am I doing an endorsement for a few $100,000 or a few $1 million? This guy is making 9 figures on this exit. And so they said, yeah, let's do that. So there's a lot of bad deals out there, right? Even with celebrities, you want to be in the top 25% of deals. Otherwise, you can lose quite a bit of money, or break even, or you're not going to beat just the S&P 500. But if you can get into those top quartile or even top decile of deals, that's where you can invest like the real ultra wealthy do. And that's where the vetting process comes in. So in this fund, we still only take the top deals. We've passed on a lot of fun ones with a lot of fun celebrities, but we've done deals with people like Justin Timberlake for his Hawthorne men's toiletries company, and Tim Tebow with New School, and even Oprah with her Judy bags, and there are several others where we not only get the advantage of having a celebrity for essentially for free, right? Like that can be one of the biggest expenses for a company, is paying these celebrity endorsements. Now these companies are getting it for free, so it benefits them. They're getting some of the best advertising you can get, because there's not a lot of people watching TV these days that are sitting around and watching the advertisements. And the way of advertising has shifted a lot to a lot of the buyers are watching Instagram and their TikTok feed and whatnot. And so you get somebody like The Rock that has 2.8 million followers, whatever he has on there. Maybe he has significantly more, and he can put out an ad or endorse this product, and people are seeing that. And most of the brands that have been created that aren't like Sony or something that's just 100 years old tend to have a celebrity endorser on them, or we don't really know about it. And it has the Jenners, Kylie Jenner, and that she's made so much money and made a lot of money for the people that she's partnered with. So we use that. But part of the fun of that deal is we actually go out to Necker Island, which is Richard Branson's private island, and we go with the A-list celebrities, and they we get to spend time with the investors and whatnot. So it's a lifestyle thing, because lifestyle is a big part of this. And that's, again, how you expand your network, is you go to an island like that and meet people that are doing cool things, and continue to do business with the people you like. Yeah.
Well, I really enjoy all this. I know we're probably getting close on time here, and we probably just barely scratched the surface. I know you and I were talking about crypto before we started and how important that is coming up. And I know that's, again, half the population's like, no, this is crazy. What are you doing? It's all smoke and mirrors, and it's based on air. Then there's the other half is the researchers like, well, wait a second, this has utility and it has exchangeability. And it's like, and not only that, the blockchain, I mean, the technology is next generation. And I'm telling you, within a few years, you're going to have pet stores on the blockchain, as well as big business sectors like the title industry. It's already looked at. So
it'll disrupt every industry for sure. It will disrupt every industry.
Yeah,
blockchain will.
I agree. And the metaverse, I mean, you just look at people in Facebook, and then you look at the real estate company called EXP, using a software called Verbella. So their operations is internalized to one physical location, and everybody sits and meets on these virtual tables. So it's amazing. But it just, and that's not even next generation. The Web3, the new metaverse, if you take people that buy clothes through Amazon now and you put them on the metaverse where they can be scanned by their video camera to measure every part of their body so they get the perfect fitting clothes from any manufacturer they want, do you think that the people are going to ignore that? No, they're going to take it in like flies on honey. I mean, to me, it just makes so much sense, but half the population is not ready yet. However, I want to get back to this. So I know there's funds out there, crypto funds, where you can buy fractional interest in real estate. I know that people are already buying real estate with crypto and things like that. But if you wouldn't mind, just share 60 seconds. And I want to also, by the way, before everybody goes, don't go anywhere, you guys, because I want you to have Eric's information. How do you find Eric? How do you communicate with him? Participate in some of the deals that Eric does, because he just gave you some really cool ones that you can participate in, as long as you're qualified. But sorry to talk faster. Tell me about your take is on crypto, and then let's follow up with how can we get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the technology is sound. I believe in the technology. Which token is going to, take over, if any? I don't know that. And I'm not a token guy. I don't pretend to be, but we had talked a little bit about how in the gold rush, the guys selling the picks and shovels were the ones making the money. I mean, Levi was the guy that made the Levi jeans. I mean, he made his biggest fortune, much more than the people making the gold even. So the fund that is kind of at hand here for me, that they invest in the companies that are building the technologies that are great tech companies. So it's a tech play, but they're towards blockchain, and they've seen that it's cyclical. Every 4 years tends to be the peak. And just like clockwork, they had a 50 times return on investment for this last segment where they sold out in 2021. And sure enough, there was a dip, and they project that there's going to be another rise over the next 4 years. So they're piling into it right now. And that's a good one. There's another one called Coin Games that I really like, that it does video games, and gaming is a massive thing that they're using crypto and blockchain as a tool for. So those are two examples. And to answer your question, if people want to find me or they want more information about the kind of investing I do and about the Infinite Freedom, it's just ericfrancom.com. That's ERICFRANCOM.com. And we'd love to have you reach out and tell you more about it.
Cool. And the first one was, I got Coin Games. The first one, I think it was my computer. It just blipped. Was it Teak or Peak was the first one?
So I probably can't go into that one right now. That would be one that if somebody can find me on the website, I'm going through creating just a little bit of NDA. I'm not sure if I can announce that one right now, but I'd certainly find that out, and I can circle back with you offline. But Coin Games is one that I really do like. As far as a single company, there's always more risk, of course, in a single company. There are some things that I really like there, but as far as the fund itself,
Okay, well, cool. Right. So guys, just a real quick, if you're driving, don't write this down. Just when you stop for the day, we're going to play the last part, to go to the show notes, so it'll be in there. But it's ericfrancom.com is a website. It looks like you're on LinkedIn. Eric Francom there, FRANCOM, and Eric is ERIC. And check it out, get some more intel, get some more case studies, what we call case studies, examples, investments. And I mean, this is why we do the podcast. We meet new people, we network, and we share. And it's a wonderful, wonderful world based in abundance. So, Eric, thanks again for joining us, man. This has been a really, really good one. I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it, and thanks. And I'll get that fund back to you. I'll just make sure that we get past that NDA, and I'll get that on my website as well for your listeners that are interested.
That sounds good to me. And everybody listening, thanks again for joining. By the way, if you could please remember to leave a review, preferably Apple, but whatever format you're following, just leave a review there. The reviews are what makes the podcast world go round. And go to ericfrancom.com, check that out. And before you leave the website, go to globalinvestoragent.com. If you are an investor, you'll find an agent who's trained to work with you in 36 states. You've only been doing it 2 years, and it's growing. And if you're an agent, man, what are you waiting for? Click on the Learn More button and jump on board this train, because it is moving fast. Okay, guys, we'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and God bless you and your families.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.